Sorry, was it? Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to give you a goodie bag.
Oh,
There's
you.
your USB.
No, sorry, I thought you were going to. Oh, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. Okay, we'll move on to the first of our vendor presentations. We did look at a range of different vendors as possibilities, and some were very eager to come along and some less so. And we're particularly pleased that Gale Cengage are able to come along. And Marius de Plessis is representing Gale Cengage. Marius is the National Sales Manager for Higher Education. And welcome. Yes, just make sure you're talking to the microphone.
Good morning. Everybody hear me? I'm a bit of a wanderer, so just give me the lazy eye if I tend to walk away from the microphone. Yeah, thanks for inviting us. I mean, ultimately, I was wondering a little bit. I mean, you guys would be familiar with our library arm, Gale Cengage Learning, and Marius is also in the room. All you guys would know Marius, and we were wondering a little bit, you know, who should do the presentation today, and thinking of trying to get the publisher's perspective over, and Marius working with library, she would probably have skewed it a little bit in a way to get you guys to hear or hear what you want to hear in some ways. Whereas if I do it, I've got no reference in terms of libraries, no bias. I'm going to give it as straight as I can possibly. And so if you've got any questions or anything like that, fire away. I'm more than happy to deal with those as we go. So I just wanted to start off with, that's obviously myself and Marius just here. And then just a brief overview of Cengage, where we sort of fit in the global scale of things from a publishing perspective. And then obviously I've spent a little bit of time with Alison talking about a couple of points that I think would address you guys. And I'm trying to make it as pertinent as I can to this specific group. So if I'm not doing that, please stop me and, as I say, ask some questions. So Cengage, we've got about 5,500 employees. Locations, 23 countries in the world. Headquarters in Australia is in Melbourne. We've got offices throughout the country. We've got an office in Sydney and Queensland also, with smaller offices regionally in WA and South Australia. We've our headquarters in the US is Stamford, Connecticut. Website details just there. And ownership is a private equity group called Apax. Apax acquired Cengage probably close to 9 years ago now. We used to be fall under the banner of Thomson Reuters. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with. And at that time, they sold off the education arm, which Apax came in board, and then we changed names to Cengage. Hopefully, that's the last time I ever tell that story because it's been 9 years now. So. And then just follow on from Cengage, you know, we publishers from primary, secondary through to the higher education, vocational education and training groups, as well as our Gale Library Reference Group that you guys will all be familiar with. Then just talking today, as I said, I had a brief chat with Alison last week, and she outlined a couple of points that thought you guys would be very interested in talking a little bit more about. And as I said, I'll give you a real publisher's perspective on these. The one point that we spoke about was maintaining profitability. I think a lot of I've heard it this morning mentioned once or twice, prices of textbooks and all of these sorts of things, and I'll get into that a little bit later too. For us as publishers in the higher education space, it is a high risk industry for us, and the reason I say that is, you know, we've got a 3-year window on average to sell our books in. Because you know, every 3 years there's either new technologies that come out, whether it is new regulations within accounting, whether it is new discoveries that they've had in certain places that changes the way we teach, etc., etc. So our window is very short in terms of how we can sell textbooks. And on average, I'd say the window is about 3 years. And so that it's a very short lifespan if you compare it to a lot of reference books where you might have something for 50, 100, 150 years, where it still sort of churns over in some ways. Just to make a point, 1 in 3 books for us is probably really profitable. 1 in 3 books is not profitable at all, and the last third is probably break even for us. When we look at these books and trying to get the most out of it, it's probably after 18 months of its life cycle it needs to break even, and then obviously go on to make some money for us towards the latter part of its life cycle. And in the first 18 months is where you probably get the most sales. As you guys know, sell through for us drop off quite dramatically after the first year and becomes less and less and less and less. So the 18-month sort of mark is the magic point for us in all of this. What does a bestseller look like? For us, bestseller is, we've got a couple of those in nursing, we've got a couple in management, etc., etc. But a bestseller, you're probably looking 16,000 copies a year if you're lucky. And that's the really good books over a life cycle. If you get anything from 30 to 40,000 copies out of a certain book, you've done extremely well with that book, and that's one you want to replicate over the years.
Should just come back on, hopefully. This could be our stretch break. Well, it's just the projector's starting. I think it's just shut down after a certain period of time.
It looks like 5 minutes. Picture appears within.
So
we might take this chance just to have a quick
Yeah.
stretch break if you like.
What a good idea.
Great suggestion.
Can't be a long one. We're back up.
Oh, okay.
there you go.
Thanks, Rob. Was it going to do that?
I don't know. So how long was that? About
It's
2
about an
hours.
hour, I'd say. But it would have been more because.
Oh, you had it turned
I've
on.
just shut it down again. Okay. Sorry, online people. We'll be back very shortly.
They had lost the connection, you think?
No, it's still there, so that should all be okay. Anyway, there was a stretch break due after this
right.
presentation.
No, it's. What happened? I'll just move the mouse every so often too.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened to some of the? I see McGraw-Hill and Pearson didn't end up coming. They,
Changes in personnel and communication. The person who was going to come.
okay. Who's that? I mean, do you know?
Yes.
Is he, do you know his position there? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, well, that's unfortunate. It's strange. McGraw-Hill, I mean, I used to work for McGraw years ago, 7, 8 years ago, and they moved their sort of structure out of Australia, out of Singapore. So I can imagine that there wouldn't have been necessarily a lot of people that could back up some steward in some way.
You know, 24 hours out and then
Yeah, almost have to move everything around. It's amazing these guys. Just looking, sitting on the chair, looking. He's happy to sit there all day, isn't he? Or she. But it would be good to get it from his perspective. Yeah. To what extent can we do it? Yeah.
He's out of here.
Help you.
Hello, we might resume now if everyone could just come back to their seats. Oh, we need the old glass, don't we? Hello, if everyone could just resume their seats, and we'll move on with the next with the rest of Marius's presentation.
Testing, testing.
That's okay. All right, we're starting again. If everyone can take their seats. Thanks, Marius. Sorry about that.
So just to continue where I've left off, maintaining profitability and what does a bestseller look like for us? And as I've said, you know, if we get anything around more than 30,000 copies out of a book, we would have done extremely well from a profitability perspective. The next point we spoke about a little bit was maintaining or increasing market share. You know, and I see Bill having a bit of a smirk back there. It is a tough industry. It is very tough for us. You know, the market's not growing. If anything, it's going backwards. And you know, the diversification of it is not helping from a publisher's perspective. You know, we're a commercial entity, and we try and make money for our private equity holders in some way. So it is a stagnant market. If we look at APA stats, Australia Publishers Association stats, the industry is going backwards by last count, and that was May's figures. We another 1 point down on previous year, and last year was probably down 3% on the year before. So, you know, it is a tough industry. we are seeing that is slowing down, at least, which is from our perspective a good thing. And it is finding new ways of getting the books out there through ebooks, through site licensing agreements and all of these sorts of things. The other thing that's important for us to maintain or increase market share is the diversity of opinion. We want as many books on every subject area as we can get. There's always different ways of thinking and looking at things, and the more we can get various opinions, providing they're profitable, we will always go down that path. So that's another one, and that's if we increase our investment through new titles, fantastic. We'd be very happy with that. The other way to increase market share is obviously acquisitions. Recently, Pearson has made a decision to exit a market, and that was the professional and vocational group, and we've acquired that list from them. The way it was structured, it was all new editions would come to us. This year is probably the first year that would really come into play for us, and we'll make some real inroads into that list over there. And the other one we've done recently, and I'm sure Marius have spoken to all of you guys at some point, is National Geographic Learning in the US that we've also acquired. The next point, just talking a little bit about pricing, competitive pricing. Pricing for us is it's a dark art in some ways. How do you come up with the right price? It's not always the easiest thing to do, and I'm sure you guys would be on the other end of things. Say publishers unreasonable about X, Y, Z, and all of these sorts of things. So this is actually Nielsen data that we get from most publishers are part of Nielsen in some way or another, and that's just out of interest sake for you guys. The average prices, sale prices from last year to this year, probably gone up by about just under 3%, I think it is. The subject areas there just gives you guys a bit of an indication there as to what the average prices in all of those are. But in terms of pricing, it is supply and demand. It's hitting that sweet spot. That it's as I say, it's a bit of a dark art in some ways, and we do the best we can in that regard. With digital products, obviously there's a little bit of a different pricing schedule that comes with it. I think this morning, I can't recall whether it was Kate or Gillian that spoke about ebooks and keeping it for life and all of these sorts of things. In the US, our e-commerce site, we offer different periods on books, whether you take it for 6 months, 12 months, and I think there's 6, 12, 8, 24, 36, and then in perpetuity, and 96% I think takes 6 months. They're not interested in I'm interested in passing my course here and now. And then the rest of it is very few and far between that we do find those who are interested in longer term. But that's just a little bit on pricing there. The other thing in terms of was Gillian this morning. I spoke a little bit about the Korean guy that imported, and I think a lot of you know the story. He actually in the end won the case. They took to the High Court in the US, was overturned. He won the case, and he could continue doing that. But needless to say, publishers then responded in some way or another. Pearson's response was to not offer US books necessarily into international markets. They ramped up I think they call it Pearson New International Editions. I think they printed 600 odd books in a very short space of time to not have that guy be able to actually get those books and ship it back into the US. And Cengage's response was to go to similar to Apple, one world pricing. You're going to be charged the same book price in every country over the world. Fortunately, Australia is fairly insular in the distribution channels of all of this, and Cengage have managed to get some restrictions, or not restrictions, some of these restrictions lifted from our parent company in the US. If we didn't manage to do that, a lot of our books would be double the price. Gillian was pointing out this morning, books in the US is very, very expensive. So we've managed to get these exemptions, which allowed us to sell within a controlled channel, Co-op and all of these places at the same price that it was before, which was a real win for us in that sense. The other thing we spoke a little bit about was quality content. Our content goes through technical edits, peer-to-peer reviews, and all of those things. If we don't, offer quality content and quality resources that go with it, we just wouldn't be competitive. It's as simple as that. And develop and enhance product delivery and features. Gillian was pointing out, the textbook isn't a textbook as it was 10, 15 years ago anymore. There's just one of our flagship products at the bottom there, MindTap. And what MindTap is, it's a learning path. It's your textbooks included. You can make notes, note sharing, highlighting, putting notes in. It actually moves the content around as you put your notes in, so it becomes part of the textbook per se. The testing mechanisms, everything is within MindTap. So if an academic adopts a MindTap, they adopt a course in so much that videos, everything is linked throughout, and so the student gets basically everything they need to complete the course. And without going into MindTap, everything we started off on the US started off on the MindTap journey probably 4 years ago, and there's about 600 odd courses in the US and books in MindTap, and then from the Australian, obviously we could get access to the US ones, but the Australian ones we're obviously MindTapping, if I can call it that, the Australian books, and we've got about 6 or 7 on the go, with another 3 that's already been delivered. So we'll probably have 10, and it'll grow from there in terms of where we'll end with MindTap. And then just looking at this group again, I try to think, how do I try and get your involvement in some ways? And, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are aware of the library sort of pilot that we're running within ProQuest. We had 7 books in there last year. We've expanded that to 20 books this year. The second semester, we'll probably upload another couple into ProQuest. And what we did with that was we tried to mimic the old model of the old textbook in the libraries, and you guys will all be aware of what we've put in there. Expansion of that, yes, there is plans to even expand that even further. The difficulty we've got within the ProQuest model is with the US books, there's rights issues, and we're trying to get across those to be able to upload more into that. If that's not going to work, we'll probably look at other ways to be able to deliver to you guys through a model that suits you. I know Vital Source is coming out with a model fairly soon. I don't think it's just ready just yet, from what I've been told. And the ProQuest one is one that we've used. If I throw this back to the group, what would be a preferred model? What would you guys be looking at in terms of getting your ebooks into a delivery platform that you can pass out to students? Is there anyone that or any suggestions from your end? Yes.
I think it's more for most people, it's about choice, because each university and library will have their own ideas about what they want.
Yep.
The big players, the one when you've got a big, reliable platform like ProQuest or like Marius, you know what you're getting.
Yep.
And it's about that consistency of
Sure.
thing. And each one will have each university library will have their presence. But above all else, we want that consistency. We want to know it's not something we fall over tomorrow.
Yep. That
we're going to have students who are coming in for exams. It's that consistency and reliability.
Yeah, so from our perspective, those are the big ones that I'm aware of, and there might be others. If we persist and pursue these ones, you guys would be happy from that perspective. I see some nods here. Yep.
Well, can you tell us a little bit more about VitalSource and where you're coming from there? Because our experience with VitalSource to date has been very much a student-based access model.
Yep.
Individual student.
And I have to say, I have not been involved in the early discussions, but our marketing manager is Susanna Bowen in Sydney, Melbourne. She's chairing that for us. And in all honesty, I can't tell you too much about it. I know they're looking at a model from a publisher's perspective, a student enrollment model. I don't know how that's going to flow through to universities from a pricing perspective or anything like that. Unfortunately, what we've heard so far is not a great deal of detail, unfortunately. So I couldn't be of any more. Yeah. Yes. All right.
The VitalSource, as you've probably seen in the recent sort of movement of companies being purchased and sold off and what have you, VitalSource, of course, are part of the Ingram Group, and they also had a product called My iLibrary, which was recently sold to ProQuest again, along with Coots. So at the moment, ProQuest are producing a best of breed between EBL and eBree, and that is actually in progress right now. So I know that there are some publishers who put their textbooks on eBree, so presumably the EBL and eBree models will come together. But what VitalSource are doing now that they've sold off My iLibrary are actually in the process. They recognize that they need to create a library access model for this type of content, for e-textbook content. And they are developing that, but we're not expecting to see that until the end of the year at the earliest, I suspect. They have at the moment what they call a bridge, which really is a little bit, it's still based on that individual student access to their books, but it's more around that the library purchases a certain number of those licenses and then doles them out. Now, I think from what I can understand is that sort of is really more like a deposit model where you would be paying in advance for a certain number of licenses for their bridge system. But beyond that, I don't know a lot of detail in terms of how it works. I know that some of the institutions in the US are using that system, and it seems to be working okay for them. But that's all I know. All I can tell you, though, is in terms of VitalSource itself, the advantage for us, if we were looking at the VitalSource path, is all of our textbooks are already on VitalSource. So we don't have that issue of then uploading or renegotiating our license with ProQuest to get all of our books onto EBL. So the thing for us is if the VitalSource model, if that is viable for you as a group, then that's the easy path for us to go down because our books are already on that platform.
Thanks, Marius. So yeah, I'm sure it's something we need to keep our eye on. My experience with VitalSource, I'd be surprised if it's end of year, but that's just my personal experience with them. But look, we're looking obviously to try and work with you guys on a continual basis. You know, the luck, or I suppose the advantage we've got is we've got Marius and our Gale reference group within Cengage, so which not a lot of other publishers do have. So, you know, we can fall back on her experience, we can fall back on her expertise, and obviously liaising with you guys to try and come up with a suitable solution for you guys. On the last point, there is something that's starting to take off a little bit for us is because there's more involvement required from and it's your expertise in digital rights management. You guys have been doing this for a long time, ebooks and all of these sorts of things. I think universities are now trying to use your expertise a little bit more in terms of negotiating contracts and all of these sorts of things with publishers. And one of the things we sort of have started doing a little bit more of is trying to come up with an umbrella agreement within universities. And most of the time, you know, it sits with the libraries because of their experience and with their touch points within the universities. And these umbrella agreements, if we can come up with those, you know, it frees up the academic on their level to make decisions based on, you know, individual choices. Whether, you know, we talk about psychology this morning, Joe blogs make a decision on this book and that book, but it frees them up in terms of if it's all within the umbrella agreement that, you know, the integration, the digital rights, all of these sorts of things have been addressed in some way, so that when he signs up to a MindTap in some ways, he doesn't have to worry about all of those sorts of things, privacy and all of these things that go along with it. That's something we are starting to ramp up, and I know we've got a lady in Sydney, Margot Griffiths, that's leading that, and Margot have reached out to I think Bill, Colleen, I think she's reached out to. So if this is something that anybody here would be interested in, I'll leave some of my cards maybe on the table there. By all means, please contact me. I'll get Margot in contact with yourselves, and we can look at you know, starting getting an umbrella agreement with Cengage and the institution underway. But in saying all of this, you know, e-textbooks, digital is the way everything's heading. You know, it's about and I'm preaching to the converted, you know, offering as much options as we can. Because no two students want to learn the same way or do learn the same way. So it's all about options, versatility within the market, and obviously getting the content out to everybody. That's all I've got. I don't know if you guys have got any questions for me specific to anything I've discussed now.
At USQ, we've had our hand up for a little while. I'm wondering if we could ask a question, please.
Yep.
It seems to me, as I was listening to you and as I've been talking to students over the years, that you've said 1/3 of textbooks make a loss.
Yep.
We know lots of students can't afford the textbooks because we can't keep up with the loans that we need to be making for them.
Mm-hmm.
We know a lot of students are downloading textbooks illegally to the extent now that some buy virtually no textbooks. Yep. On the standard market. That says to me, perhaps, that textbooks are now becoming at irrelevancy, and that we need to think about a different model. And the model that perhaps strikes me as being the most immediately obvious, and this could be very unimaginative of me, is the personal learning environment model. And the technologies that are opening up there are letting us now have so many options, and we're in a space now where we could have students, academics and librarians all working together in these environments to be giving genuinely learning-centred experiences where we would have had, and where you're still advocating for, a textbook.
Yep.
So my feeling is, why are we talking about this? Its days possibly are gone. And they went a while ago and we all just didn't figure that out.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't disagree with you, but I'm not going to agree with you entirely either. Obviously, I've got my publisher's hat on in some way. Look, it is a changing market, that's something we recognise as much as anybody else. It is our biggest challenge is, you know, ultimately the content is where the worth lies, and we refer to textbooks, and I think referring to the textbook is just an old way of thinking, course and, you know, student and all of these sorts of things. In all honesty, I don't care whether we slate it out in tablets, or, you know, whether we give it to them as a customized version of whatever. You know, the content is obviously the key element here. And I agree with you. You know, textbooks is probably seen its days in some way. It is finding a new way to get the content out, and believe me, we look at that every day, because that's our bread and butter in some ways. And through working with guys like yourselves, you know, it is finding that new way of delivering the content. If that makes sense.
Yep, thank you.
Any other questions, possibly?
Yeah, we possibly should. Oh, you can make it quick.
Hi, I've just done some quick sums, and the people from libraries in this audience our libraries have a combined purchasing power probably around 60 million.
Yep.
And I think I'd be right that most libraries are probably at about 90–95% spending online.
Mm-hmm.
And there are plenty of publishers who are willing to sell us stuff. You know, we would have a combined catalogue of millions of ebooks already, and we would have tens of millions of downloads across our electronic resources, you know. So if there are publishers that are not selling to us, I'd say that, you know, we have moved into the right place, but but have those publishers moved into the right place?
Yeah. And I think that's the short answer is I think libraries have got a lot more experience in it, have been doing it for a lot longer, whereas the old traditional publishing model for us has only really changed to that extent in the last three years or so. So look, I agree. I think we need to move more to that. For us, it's a question of how do we work with you. If any library comes to us and say, look, we've got a proposal, we'll look at it with genuine respect and go into it and see whether we can find a solution. It is something that's changing for us, and finding new models is all what we're about at this point in time. So we want to move away from the old traditional way, if that makes sense. Anything else?
I'll just say that we need to be aware that you need to keep an income stream or you go out of business.
Yep.
And from our point of view, we need to try and maximise student access to content. The move from print to e and us trying to just move that model into e doesn't work.
Yeah.
You sell fewer than 1 in 3 print at first years. Any model sells at first years, 1 in 5 as you go on through the years. They're coming from high schools where they all have access to the content. And that's what, as a professional group, we should be looking at. And if all of them had access to the e, and we were able to establish within our own institutions models that provided that at an appropriate unit cost, which would maintain your income stream, we'd lose 35% of our busyness in the libraries, which I think we could redirect in other schools. And I think this is where we really should be going. This idea of just moving from a print to an e-model and buggerising around is just a waste of time.
Yeah. And to add to that, Bill, I mean, if we manage to move that model to that where everybody gets access, prices will halve. If not less. I mean, all of a sudden we can look at great pricing for not only universities but students, and because our sell-through levels just because we don't have 1 in 5 students purchasing. So yeah.
Thanks very much, Marius. There's quite a lot of questions. I can feel the room simmering. We will have an opportunity in the last session for a Q&A, and I hope that the publishers are going to hang around for that, because I think a lot of the questions are going to be for them. So